My father gave a toast at my brother's rehearsal dinner last spring, and in it, he said, in front of 47 people, including my brother's future in-laws, including me sitting 3 tables away near the hallway to the kitchen, that his proudest achievement in life was raising a son like my brother. He paused after he said it. Let the room applaud. Then he sat down and didn't look in my direction once. I've had a long time to get used to that, longer than most people would believe. My name is Lily. I'm 31 years old. I own a logistics technology company called Fieldline that I built from nothing over the past 6 years. We manage last-mile delivery infrastructure for mid-size retailers across 11 states. Last year, we processed contracts worth a little over $22 million. I have 19 full-time employees. I have a corner office in Austin with windows that face west, and every evening around 6 o'clock the light comes through and turns the whole room gold. My parents don't know any of that. Or rather, they didn't. Not until the night everything changed. Let me back up. My brother Colton is 4 years younger than me. He's smart, he's charming, he played lacrosse in college and graduated from a school with a name my parents liked to say slowly at dinner parties. He got a job at a commercial real estate firm straight out of graduation and made manager within 3 years. My parents talked about him the way some people talk about a solar eclipse, like something rare and extraordinary had happened in their presence, and they needed everyone around them to understand the magnitude of it. I don't say this to be unkind to Colton. He worked hard. He earned what he has. The problem was never Colton. The problem was that I existed alongside him, and my parents never quite forgave me for not being simpler. I was the one who asked too many questions at the dinner table, the one who didn't date the right kind of person at the right kind of time, the one who, at 23, I was leaving my accounting job to start a spying company, and watched his face do something I can only describe as grief. Not anger. Grief. Like I'd announced something terminal. You have a stable career, he said. Why would you throw that away? My mother said nothing. She had a way of going quiet that was somehow louder than anything she could have said out loud. That was 6 years ago. I moved to Austin. I maxed out 2 credit cards and slept on an air mattress in a studio apartment for 14 months while I built the first version of our routing software. I had 1 client, then 3, then 12. I hired my first employee, a kid named Bart who had a genius for back-end architecture and a coffee addiction that made mine look modest, and we worked out of a WeWork for 8 months before I could afford a real lease. I called my parents occasionally. They asked if I was still doing the tech thing. I said yes. They moved on to talking about Colton. For 6 years, I showed up to family events, like a guest, who wasn't quite on the list. Thanksgiving in their big house outside Nashville. Christmas, a cousin's wedding 2 summers ago, where my mother introduced me to someone as Colton's older sister and didn't mention my name. I sat through it. I smiled. I drank whatever wine was on the table and reminded myself that I was going home to something I had built with my own hands. And that had to be enough. Then Colton got engaged. Her name is Vanessa. She's originally from Oregon, and she works in supply chain consulting for a firm out of Chicago. She's sharp. The kind of sharp that is quiet and watchful, the kind that notices things. The first time I met her was at a family dinner about 8 months before the wedding. And she shook my hand and said, "Colton's told me about you. You're in logistics, right?" I said yes. She tilted her head slightly. "What company?" "Mine," I said. She smiled at that. Not the polite reflex smile people give when they're not listening. A real one. That was the only real conversation I had that entire evening. The rehearsal dinner was held at a restaurant, Sash's, called the Orchard Room, in the hills outside Nashville. It was the kind of place with exposed beams and candles, in amber glass, and a prix-fixe menu that my father had almost certainly paid too much for, which he enjoyed. He liked being able to afford things. He liked other people knowing he could afford them. I drove up from Austin alone. 7 hours. I'd been in back-to-back calls all week. We were finalizing a distribution partnership with a regional grocery chain in the Midwest that had taken 4 months to negotiate, and the timing was genuinely terrible. But Colton had asked me to come. He'd called me himself, which was rare. And his voice had something in it that sounded like actual wanting, so I went. I arrived at the venue and found my mother near the entrance talking to Vanessa's parents. She saw me, finished her sentence, and then walked over and hugged me. In the way she did, brief, the kind that communicates duty rather than warmth. "You made it," she said. I said I would. She looked at my dress. "You look tired." 7-hour drive. She turned back toward Vanessa's parents and I went to find the seating chart. My name was on a card at table 11. I looked at the room. Table 11 was near the back, close to where the waitstaff came and went through a swinging door. The proximity to the kitchen was not, I decided, a coincidence. I sat down. Around me were a cousin I barely knew, a college friend of Colton's, whose name I forgot immediately, and 2 people who appeared to be distant relatives of Vanessa's from out of town. We were polite to each other. We ate the salad course. At the main tables, my parents sat with Vanessa's parents and a few of my father's business associates. Colton moved between tables, attentive and easy the way he always was in social situations. He stopped by table 11 briefly, squeezed my shoulder, said, "I'm glad you're here," and kept moving. The food was good. I ate it mechanically. I was still half thinking about the grocery chain contract. Then my father Colton's work ethic. His character. The pride he felt watching his son build a career, build a life, choose a wonderful woman. He said that everything he'd ever hoped to pass on as a father, discipline, integrity, drive, he saw reflected in Colton. He said that the greatest thing a parent could do was raise a child who made them proud, and that he was grateful every day to have done exactly that. He raised his glass. The room raised theirs. I held mine and did not drink. My mother caught my eye from across the room. She held my gaze for exactly 1 second and then looked away. After dessert, a pear tart with something caramel that I cannot tell you the taste of, because by that point I had the particular numbness that comes from sitting very still through something that is quietly breaking you. People began to bill around. The room got louder and more fluid. I was thinking about leaving. I was calculating the drive back, whether I should get a hotel, whether the meeting tomorrow was early enough to matter. And then Vanessa appeared at my elbow. She had a glass of white wine and a look on her face that I couldn't immediately read. "Can I steal you for a second?" she said. We moved to a quieter spot near the window, away from the main tables. Outside, the hills were dark, and the lights of the restaurant reflected in the glass. "I've been meaning to ask you something," she said. "My firm has been doing some work in the last-mile logistics space, evaluating platforms for a client rollout. And one name keeps coming up." She paused. "Fieldline." I looked at her. "Is that your company?" she said. "Yes," I said. Vanessa set her wineglass down on the windowsill. "You're the founder." It wasn't exactly a question. "I am," I said. She stared at me for a moment with an expression I can only describe as recalibration. I had no idea, she said. Colton mentioned you were in tech, but Lily, Fieldline is on our shortlist. We've been looking at your platform for weeks. Our client is a mid-size retailer in Ohio. The routing optimization is. She stopped. I'm sorry. I'm rambling. I didn't know. Most people here don't, I said. She looked back at the room. At my parents' table. At my father, who was laughing at something with Vanessa's father, relaxed and expansive in the way he only was when he felt the evening had gone well. He doesn't know, she said. It was not a question either. No. She was quiet for a moment. Does Colton? He knows I have a company. Not the details. She picked her wine glass back up, turned it in her hand. I'm going to tell him, she said. If that's okay. He should know. I said it was fine. I wasn't sure what I felt about it, but I said it was fine because I was tired of managing how much truth other people could handle at any given time. What I didn't expect was what happened next. Vanessa didn't wait until later. Vanessa, I would learn, was not a person who waited when she felt something needed doing. She walked back to the main table, said something to Colton that I couldn't hear, and watched his face change. He looked up from across the room and found me. I gave him a small wave. He looked, I don't have a better word for it, stunned. Then he said something to my father. I watched my father's expression from across the room, with the strange detachment you sometimes get in high-pressure moments, when everything goes quiet. And you can see things very clearly. His face went through several things in quick succession. Confusion. A kind of effortful comprehension. And then something I had never seen there before. Not in 31 years. Something that looked, if I am being honest, like being caught. My mother turned to look at me. She had a champagne flute in her hand and she was very still. Colton crossed the room. He pulled me into a hug that was longer than any hug we'd exchanged in at least 5 years. He held on for a moment before he let go. Why didn't you tell me? He said. Low, so just the two of us could hear. You never asked, I said, and it didn't come up. He shook his head. I should have asked. Lily, I should have asked a long time ago. That broke something opened in me that I'd had sealed for a while. I didn't cry. I don't say that with pride. I just physically couldn't. Right then, in that room, in front of everyone. But I felt it. The specific grief of being seen by your brother a decade late in a restaurant at his rehearsal dinner. It's okay, I said, because I needed to say something. It's not, he said, but I'm going to fix that. He turned back toward the table. My father was standing now. His conversation with Vanessa's father had stalled. Vanessa's father, whose name was Robert and who, it turned out, worked in venture capital, was looking at me with an expression of genuine interest. Is it true? My father said, when Colton led me back to the table. His voice had a quality I'd never heard in it before. Careful. Like he was checking if the ground would hold. Is what true? I said, though I knew. The company. He said it like a word he wasn't sure he had the right to use. Fieldline, I said. Yes, you built that. I built that. Vanessa's father leaned forward. We've been evaluating Fieldline for a client deployment. It's an impressive platform. You have a remarkable solution for the regional carrier problem. He said it easily, the way people in that world speak about work they respect. Like it was obvious. Like it had always been obvious. My father sat down. I don't think he meant to. I think his legs decided before he did. My mother said nothing. She had been saying nothing for several minutes, which was the longest I could remember her going without filling the silence. She looked at the champagne in her hand. She set it down. The dinner wrapped up not long after that. There were more hugs, the obligatory photos near the door, the general orchestrated warmth of an event finding its endus. Vanessa hugged me on the way out and said, quietly, "I'll call you Monday, about the platform." I said okay. I meant it. Colton walked me to my car. The parking lot was lit by those globe, string lights that feel very much of this particular decade, and the night was mild in the particular way. Tennessee evenings can be in late April. Warm enough to stand in without a jacket, cool enough to make you want to stay outside just a little longer than you need to. "I want to know everything," he said, "about the company. All of it. I want to hear it." "I'll tell you," I said. "Come visit Austin. I'll show you the office." He looked at me for a long moment. "I'm sorry I didn't know sooner." "You know now," I said. I drove out of the parking lot and merged onto the highway and turned the volume up on whatever was playing, and I let myself feel it. All of it. The years of Table 11, the toasts that didn't say my name, the introductions that left me out. I let it sit in my chest for a few miles, and then I breathed through it and let it go, the way you do when you've been carrying something for so long that putting it down doesn't feel like relief exactly. It feels like remembering what your arms are for. I got a hotel outside of Nashville. I had a contract call at 8 the next morning. The grocery chain partnership closed the following Thursday. It was the biggest single deal in Fieldline's history. Colton came to Austin 6 weeks later. I showed him the office. I showed him the routing software on a big screen in the conference room while two of my engineers talked him through it. I watched him watch it. And I watched something shift in his face, the same kind of recalibration I'd seen in Vanessa's. He called our parents that evening. From my couch, while I made dinner in the kitchen, I could hear fragments. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. I didn't hear what they said back. My parents sent me an email the following week. It was 3 paragraphs, sis. My mother wrote it, sis. I could tell by the phrasing. It said that they hadn't known the extent of what I'd built. It said they were proud. It said they hoped we could have dinner soon, all of us, together. I read it twice. I thought about the toast. I thought about Table 11. I thought about being introduced without a name. I wrote back. I said thank you. I said I'd be in Nashville for the holidays and we could talk then. I didn't promise anything beyond that. I'm not sure what I can promise beyond that. What I know is this. I built something real. I built it alone, in the years when no one in my family was paying attention, and I built it well. That doesn't unhappen because someone finally looked up. But Colton looked up. He crossed the room and found me. And, in my experience, that's not a small thing. In my experience, that's close to everything. The Thursday morning after Fieldline's biggest deal closed, I stood in my office and watched the light come through the west-facing windows and turn everything gold. And I thought, not for the first time, but more quietly than before, that this was mine. All of it. The 19 people down the hall. The coffee cart in the lobby that Bart insisted on after year 2. The routing software that Vanessa's firm is now piloting for a retailer in Ohio, which means that somewhere in a supply chain meeting, someone is saying my company's name. My father gave a toast and left me out. I gave 6 years to something that will outlast the slight. I think that's enough.